Welcome to Revenge Amy. Thank you for watching the story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We're on the road to our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single click from you is a huge boost for this channel. Let's build an amazing community together.
My name is Claire Whitman, 31 years old. The text arrived on a Tuesday morning just 2 days before Thanksgiving. I was in my office, a mug of coffee gone cold at my elbow, a sprawling holiday staffing chart laid across my desk. Thompson Culinary Holdings, my creation, my empire, was already in full throttle. 7 restaurants, 2 catering companies, nearly 200 employees, each preparing for one of the busiest holidays of the year. My mind was juggling delivery schedules, last-minute orders, call-outs, overtime approvals. The hum of logistics was second nature to me by now. That was when the message came through. Short, sharp, like a knife pressed flat against skin. Claire, we've decided on family only for Thanksgiving this year. Find somewhere else to eat. The reservation at Whitestone Grill is just for the real family. Mom, I reread the words, my chest tightening as though a hand had pushed firmly against it. Family only. The real family. They stung even though part of me had braced for it. My mother always had a way of cutting with casual cruelty, as though blunt honesty were a badge of strength. But this was not thoughtless. This was deliberate exile. A deliberate statement that in her eyes, I was not truly family. My fingers trembled as I turned to the computer on my desk. I opened our reservation system, typed in the last name Whitman, and there it was glowing back at me with smug irony. Whitman, party of 12. Thursday, 4:20 p.m. Private dining room. Premium holiday menu. Wine pairings. Seasonal floral arrangements. Booked under Mrs. Margaret Whitman's name. My own mother had excluded me from Thanksgiving dinner, then chosen to host her grand family celebration at the crown jewel of my empire, Whitestone Grill, my flagship restaurant. For a long moment, I simply sat in silence, absurdity pressing down on me like a weight. My family had no idea. None at all. They didn't know that the restaurant they were so eager to flaunt belonged to me, that the experience they'd reserved so proudly had been created by the very daughter they dismissed as an underachiever. I leaned back in my chair, gazing out through the tall pane of glass into the dining floor below. The restaurant pulsed with energy. Chefs moving like a choreographed ballet, servers polishing crystal until it gleamed, the kitchen expelling rich aromas of garlic, rosemary, fresh-baked bread. Whitestone Grill was living proof of my sacrifices, of years of relentless nights, stubborn refusal to quit, faith carried on sheer grit. To them, though I was just Claire, the dropout who left law school to chase silly food trucks. The black sheep. The disappointment. My phone buzzed again. This time flashing Jordan Hayes, my general manager. His voice when I answered was warm and steady, professional as always. Good morning, Claire. You ready for the big week? I swallowed hard, willing steel into my tone. Jordan, we need to discuss the Whitman reservation for Thursday. Of course. Party of 12, private dining room. They requested the premium package. Your mother seemed very excited when she booked it. Said it was going to be a perfect family celebration. The knot in my chest hardened. Perfect family celebration. Without me. I need you to cancel that reservation, I said. There was a pause, audible even through the line. Cancel? Claire, it's Tuesday. Thanksgiving is in 2 days. I know. That's nearly a $3,000 booking. The food is ordered, the staff assigned, the room decorated. I'll cover the costs. I cut in. But the reservation has to go. Jordan hesitated, his voice dropping. May I ask why? Is there an issue with payment? It's a personal matter. Please call Mrs. Whitman and inform her Whitestone Grill can't accommodate their party. Silence lingered before he spoke again, slower now, careful. You realize finding a table for 12 on Thanksgiving will be nearly impossible. A bitter laugh rose in my throat, sharp and humorless. I'm sure they'll figure something out. When the call ended, I stood by the window again. The restaurant sparkled below, humming with pre-holiday anticipation. My staff moved with confidence, unaware of the private drama unraveling behind their employer's composed face. To them I was a leader, a builder, the woman who had climbed from a battered food truck to Michelin stars. But to my family, I was still nothing more than the daughter who worked weekends and holidays, the one who never married, the one who never gave them the simple, brag-worthy narrative of success they craved. My older brother David, the celebrated lawyer, was their trophy. My younger sister Emily, the nurse with 2 beautiful children, their pride. And me? I was the mistake they never admitted aloud. What they didn't know was that my mistake had grown into something far greater than they could imagine. $12 million in annual revenue, 200 employees who depended on me, an empire they had never once asked about. 30 minutes later, Jordan called back. His tone was hesitant, carrying the weight of the conversation he had just endured. "Claire, I reached your mother. She was not pleased. Demanded to speak with the owner directly." I allowed myself the smallest smile. "And what did you tell her?" "That the private dining room had a scheduling conflict. She asked about the main dining room, but I said we're fully booked, which is true." "Perfect." "She said this is ruining their holiday, that she had family flying in. She was very upset." "I'm sure she was," I said softly. Then Jordan's voice lowered. "Claire, may I ask you something? Why are you canceling your own family's dinner?" I stared at the ceiling, fighting the crack in my voice. "Because they uninvited me." A long silence. Then gently, "But you are family." "Apparently not the right kind," I whispered when the call ended. I sat in the dim hush of my office, my heart already hardening into steel. This year would not end like every other, with me quietly swallowing their judgment, playing the part of the invisible daughter. This year would be different. The hours crawled by after I canceled the Whitman reservation. I buried myself in reports and menu notes, but beneath the surface my phone vibrated like a restless insect, carrying messages I didn't want to read. The first came from Emily, my younger sister. "Mom told me about Thanksgiving. Are you okay? Want to come to our house instead?" I stared at the words for a long time, my stomach twisting. Emily always meant well, always softened the blow when Mom's sharpness cut too deep. But there was no outrage in her text, no indignation that I had been exiled. Just an offering like scraps brushed off a table. "Come to our house. Second choice. Second place." Then David, my older brother, ever the lawyer, ever the strategist of words. "Mom just wants to keep it simple this year." Simple. The word clanged in my head like a cruel joke. Excluding a daughter wasn't simplicity. It was strategy. It was optics. It was my brother's specialty, phrasing away the ugliness so it disappeared behind neat, polished language. Finally, my father. His text was short, tired, familiar. "Your mother is stressed. Don't take it personally." A humorless laugh tore from my throat. How else was I supposed to take it? They wanted me absent. They all knew it was wrong, but none of them would challenge her. I set my phone down, fingers clenched. My heart had begun beating in a new rhythm. Steel, not surrender. This year would not end like the others. By early afternoon, the call I had expected finally came. My mother's number lit up my phone and I answered with deliberate calm. "Claire," she began, her voice trembling with just enough panic to sound authentic. "Something terrible happened. Whitestone Grill canceled our reservation 2 days before Thanksgiving. Can you believe it?" I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. "Oh no. That's awful. Which restaurant?" "Whitestone," she said quickly, as if she hadn't uttered the name herself when she booked it. "It was perfect. Everything arranged. And now it's ruined. Your Uncle Charles is flying in. Your cousin Lauren is driving from Phoenix. Everyone was coming. Claire, you work in restaurants. Do you know anyone who could help us find a place? Somewhere elegant." I stared up at the ceiling light, the irony almost too dazzling to face. My mother, who had just excluded me, was now asking me to save her holiday. "I might know some people," I said carefully. Her relief was audible. "Oh, thank heavens. Somewhere impressive, Claire. You know how Charles brags about his children. We wanted to show the family we're doing well. Whitestone was perfect. So exclusive. 3 stars. We were so excited to tell everyone we'd be dining there. Impressive. Exclusive. Perfect. Not a word about love. Not a word about family." "I'll see what I can do," I murmured as I hung up. A thought burned in my chest, equal parts pain and resolve. If my family wanted a performance, Maybe it was time I stepped onto the stage. The rest of Tuesday unfolded with my phone vibrating ceaselessly, every message flavored with the same hollow tone, concern laced with evasion. They wanted to look compassionate without risking my mother's disapproval. Emily again. Are you okay? You can come to our house. David. Mom just wants to keep it simple. Dad, she's stressed. Don't take it personally. I read them all, the old ache rising. An ache of being misunderstood, dismissed, underestimated. To them, I was the dropout who traded courtrooms for kitchens, the cautionary tale told at holiday tables. They never asked what those food trucks had become. They never wanted to know how many nights I slept on stiff mattresses in borrowed apartments, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. While they toasted champagne at family dinners, I was elbows deep in dough, training young chefs who believed in me, negotiating with suppliers who doubted me, building kitchens out of nothing but stubborn will. My mother's voice still echoed. Family only. That evening, the city outside shimmered against my office glass. I stayed late, scribbling notes, restless energy humming in my veins. For the first time in years, I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. Anger that tasted almost electric, sharper than the knives I once wielded in cramped food trucks. The phone rang again. Her name on the screen. I almost let it ring out. But something in me wanted to hear her desperation. Claire, she said, syrup dripping over desperation. I'm so glad you answered. We're in a terrible bind. Whitestone was perfect and now we have nothing. Do you know how humiliating this is? Uncle Charles arrives tomorrow. Lauren's already on the road. We can't possibly tell them there's no plan. You must have connections. I pressed my lips together, voice calm. I might know some people. But Mom, why did you decide on family only in the first place? The pause was thick, awkward. We just wanted to keep it simple, she said at last. Simple. I repeated. Am I not family? Of course you are, sweetheart. But you work so much. You miss so many dinners. We thought you'd be more comfortable doing your own thing. Doing my own thing. Or was it because she thought my being there would ruin the image? Or, I said slowly, was it because you wanted to impress Uncle Charles? Her breath bristled, defensive. What are you implying? That maybe you thought my being there would spoil the picture. Silence stretched. Then she sighed, weary, frayed at the edges. You don't understand, Claire. Your brother is thriving in law. Emily has a wonderful family. And Charles always compares his children. It's exhausting. I just wanted the evening to be impressive. Her words burned. And you thought leaving me out would make it more impressive. I didn't mean it that way, she whispered. You did, I said quietly. You meant it exactly that way. We ended the call on brittle terms, her pleading for me to make some calls, me promising only that I'd see what I could do afterward. I paced my office, my thoughts jagged and sharp. This wasn't about one dinner. It was about years of dismissal. Years of being the outsider in my own family's story. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was a failed dreamer clinging to food trucks. They had no idea that the very ground beneath their feet, the dinner they craved so desperately, belonged to me. That night, alone in my office, I pulled out an old photograph, me in a grease-streaked apron, standing proudly in front of my first truck, eyes fierce despite exhaustion. My family had seen that girl as a joke. They never stayed long enough to watch her transform. Now the irony was delicious. They were begging me for help, and the help they needed came from the daughter they had cast aside. By Wednesday morning, the calls intensified. Emily left a voicemail, her voice tight with worry. Mom's panicking, Claire. She's calling everywhere. No one has space for 12. She's crying. Could you maybe, I don't know, reach out to some of your contacts? I could almost hear the unspoken words. Fix this. Save us. And a part of me wanted to let them scramble. Let Thanksgiving collapse into fast food or chain restaurants. Let Uncle Charles see the cracks in their perfect facade. But another part of me, quieter but insistent, knew this was my chance. Not just to help but to be seen. To force them to face the truth they had ignored for years. I dialed Jordan. He answered on the first ring. Claire, your mother has called back 3 times. Each more desperate than the last. She asked if we could recommend other restaurants. I gave her names, but honestly everything's booked. She was on the verge of tears. Tears. The image of my mother, usually so composed, unraveling in desperation. It twisted something inside me. She wasn't evil, I reminded myself. Just vain. Image-obsessed. Shallow in ways that cut deeper than she ever realized. She hadn't excluded me out of malice. She'd excluded me because she was embarrassed. And that truth cut sharper than hatred. "Jordan," I said, my voice steady now, "what if we gave them the reservation back?" There was a pause. "You want to reinstate it?" "Yes. But with one change." "What change?" "The party of 12 becomes a party of 13. His intake of breath crackled over the line. "You mean you'll be joining them?" "Yes," I said. "If they want their perfect dinner, they'll have to make room for me." Wednesday evening fell heavy over the city, the kind of night where holiday lights sparkled against a backdrop of restless streets. Stores were crowded with last-minute shoppers, the air humming with urgency. But inside my office at Whitestone Grill, time felt strangely still, frozen by the decision I had already made. For 2 days my mother had begged. My siblings had circled around the truth, offering half-hearted comfort. And the irony only grew sharper. The family who declared me not real had discovered too late that their perfect holiday revolved around me. Now the stage was set. Jordan Hayes knocked on my office door. He carried a clipboard, his expression serious but tinged with curiosity. "Everything's prepped for tomorrow. Do you want me to reinstate the Whitman reservation now?" "Yes," I said. "But make it for 13. His brows lifted, though he didn't speak right away. "So you're joining them?" I held his gaze. "Exactly. If they want their perfect Thanksgiving, they'll have to make room for me." He nodded slowly, something like admiration in his eyes. "That's bold." "It's necessary," I replied. Jordan didn't press further. He was loyal, professional, and wise enough to understand that this was no longer about logistics. This was about years of silence, years of dismissal, all boiling toward one night. After he left, I lingered by the window. I remembered the mornings in the food truck, hands numb from cold, chopping vegetables under weak streetlights. The ridicule from my family, the looks of pity, the sighs of disappointment. And now here I stood in the penthouse office of a 3-star empire, ready to force them to see what they had refused to acknowledge. Under Thursday morning, Thanksgiving dawned gray and restless. Whitestone's kitchen came alive at dawn, steam rising from simmering pots, the clatter of knives echoing like percussion in an orchestra. Chefs moved with choreographed precision, staff polishing glasses until they gleamed like crystal stars. It was my kingdom, my empire in motion, and tonight, it would double as a stage. At mid-morning, the inevitable call came. My mother's voice was bright, brittle with forced cheer. "Claire, thank you again for pulling strings. Whitestone actually reinstated us. I don't know how you managed it, but it's a miracle. You're amazing." Her praise was so syrupy it almost made me laugh. A week ago I'd been too busy, too different, too embarrassing to sit at her table. Now I was a miracle worker. "I'm glad it worked out," I said evenly. "I told your father you must know someone important." "Who is it?" "The manager?" "The chef." I let silence stretch for a moment. "Someone with influence," I replied carefully. She laughed nervously. "Well, thank heavens you do. Otherwise it would have been a disaster. Charles is already in town. And he was impressed when he heard we'd be dining at Whitestone. You know how he brags about his son, the surgeon, and his daughter, the investment banker. This is our chance to show we're doing just as well." Her words landed heavy. Not joy at being together. Not love for family. Just bragging rights. Just image. "Mom," I said softly, "do you ever wonder why I'm not someone you brag about?" There was a pause. "Claire, that's not fair. Isn't it? You parade David and Emily around like trophies. What am I to you?" "You're different," she said finally. Different. The word I had lived under my entire life, wielded like a polite knife. We ended the call shortly after. Her tone brittle, mine calm but unyielding. That afternoon, my siblings started messaging. David, ever pragmatic. "Mom says you saved Thanksgiving. Whatever you did, thanks. Efficient. Transactional. Emily, softer. I'm glad you'll be with us tonight. It wouldn't feel right without you. Her sincerity warmed me, but only slightly. She still hadn't stood up to Mom. None of them had. At 3 o'clock sharp, Jordan appeared in my doorway. Everything's ready. Private dining room is set, staff prepped. The Whitmans will arrive at 4. Good, I said, straightening my jacket. He studied me, cautious. Claire, you don't have to do this. You could just let them eat. Let them leave and keep your secret safe. I met his gaze. No, Jordan. Tonight the secret ends. Under 4 o'clock came. The Whitman family arrived in polished waves. David in his tailored suit, Emily balancing her toddler on one hip, my father looking tired but content. My mother glowed with pride as she ushered them inside. Uncle Charles's booming voice filled the entrance, his presence larger than life, Cousin Lauren trailing behind him. I watched from the shadows as they admired the chandeliers, the polished wood, the elegance of Whitestone's private dining room, and then they saw me. Mom blinked, startled, before forcing a smile. Claire, you're here. I am, I said, stepping forward. Seat 13, remember? A hush fell as I joined them at the long table. My siblings exchanged uncertain glances, but no one spoke. Finally, Uncle Charles, tall and imposing, broke the silence with his genial tone. Well now, Claire, good to see you. What do you do these days? Still tinkering with food trucks. The words hit like a slap, though he meant no harm. He simply didn't know. I smiled faintly. Something like that. Dinner began with forced pleasantries, wine poured into crystal glasses, silverware clinking against china. Conversation swirled around David's cases, Emily's children, Charles's endless boasting about his own successful offspring. I stayed quiet, listening, the outsider even at my own table, until Charles turned back to me. And you, Claire, he said, jovial. Tell us more. Your mother said you helped secure this reservation. That must mean you have powerful friends in the industry. I saw my mother stiffen, her fork pausing midair. She hadn't expected the spotlight to swing my way so soon. I do, I said. But not in the way you think. David chuckled lightly. Come on, Claire, don't be mysterious. Who do you know? A maitre d'? A supplier. I set my glass down deliberately. I know the owner. The table went still. Mom laughed too quickly. Yes, she knows the owner. That's how we got back in. No, I said, my voice sharper now. I am the owner. The silence that followed was profound. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Eyes widened. Air thickened with disbelief. You? Uncle Charles asked, incredulous. You own Whitestone? I held his gaze steadily. I do. Whitestone and 6 other restaurants. 2 catering companies. Together they employ over 200 people. Last year we grossed $12 million. David blinked. Emily's lips parted. My father set down his glass with a muted clink. And my mother, her face drained of color, the facade cracking across her features. I thought, she whispered. I thought you were still with food trucks. I was, I said evenly. That's where it started. But you never asked what it became. The silence deepened, shame coiling through it like smoke. For years, she had carried the story of her disappointing daughter. And now, in front of Charles, in front of everyone, that story collapsed. Charles was the first to recover, his booming voice slicing through the tension. Remarkable. From a truck to an empire, that's the grit I admire. You must be very proud, Margaret. My mother swallowed, her hands trembling against her napkin. Yes, she said faintly. Yes, I am. But her eyes, when they met mine, carried not pride, but a storm, shame, regret, and something close to fear. The silence after my confession, I am the owner, was so heavy it seemed to press against the walls of the private dining room. Forks hovered halfway to mouths, wine glasses stilled. Even the hum of conversation from the main dining floor beyond seemed to dim. Uncle Charles finally broke it with a booming laugh, though disbelief still colored his tone. Well, I'll be damned. From a truck to an empire. That's the kind of grit I admire. He turned to my mother, his thick brows lifted. Margaret, you must be proud. My mother's voice faltered. Yes, of course. But her eyes, when they flicked to mine, carried not pride, but panic. The dinner stumbled forward, but the air had shifted. My siblings stole glances at me, uncertain, while Charles peppered me with questions about operations, investors, Michelin inspections. I answered calmly, each word both vindication and blade, slicing through the carefully crafted image my family had built of me as a failure. At last, when dessert was served, my mother leaned toward me, her voice low, trembling. "Claire, why didn't you tell us?" I turned to her, meeting her gaze. "Because you never asked." Her eyes glistened, tears threatening to fall. "I was wrong." "Yes," I said softly. "You were." The words hung heavy, and for a moment the table seemed to breathe again. But the peace was fragile, brittle as glass. It was my father who spoke next, clearing his throat. "Claire, your mother just didn't understand. None of us did. But tonight proves how wrong we were." His attempt at peace felt hollow. Recognition after the fact was not absolution. David bristled, his jaw tightening. "You can't blame Mom for not bragging about you. She didn't know. You kept it hidden." I turned my gaze to him, steady and sharp. "Did I? Or did you never ask? You never wanted to hear about my work because you assumed it didn't matter." Emily's voice, quiet but trembling, broke in. "She's right." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "We never asked." The silence that followed was brutal. My mother twisted her napkin into shreds, her composure unraveling. Uncle Charles, perhaps sensing the storm, tried to lighten the mood. "What matters now is that she's built something remarkable. Families misunderstand each other sometimes. Tonight can be a new beginning." But for me, smoothing over wasn't the point. Tonight was about truth. I looked directly at my mother, her eyes glossy, her lips quivering. "Tell me honestly," I said. "Are you sorry because you hurt me? Or sorry because you didn't know I was successful?" The question cut through the room like a blade. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "Both. Which matters more?" I pressed. Her tears slipped free. "Excluding you. That's what I regret most. Not your success. Just forgetting you were my daughter before anything else." For a moment something cracked inside me. I saw not the image-obsessed woman desperate to impress her brother, but a mother realizing the damage she had caused, and yet doubt still gnawed at me. Would she have felt that regret if the truth hadn't come out in such spectacular fashion? Dessert sat untouched, pumpkin tartlets with cinnamon gelato wilting under the tension. Conversation staggered forward in fits and starts, every word weighed down by the revelation that had detonated at the table. My mother reached under the table, squeezing my hand with a grip that trembled. "I'm proud of you, Claire," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Not for the money, for the strength. For never giving up, even when I didn't believe in you." I searched her face, desperate for sincerity. For the first time I thought I saw it. Still, I let my hand rest lightly in hers, cautious. "Then prove it," I murmured. "Don't just say it tonight because Charles is listening. Prove it when no one else is watching." Her tears spilled faster, and she nodded. By the time coffee was served, the battle lines had softened, but they were still there, etched beneath the tablecloth. My siblings, tentative but warmer, asked small questions about my work. My father looked at me with a mixture of pride and guilt. My mother, subdued, clung to my words like lifelines. But beneath it all, I knew this night wasn't an ending. It was an opening wound, raw and bleeding, with no guarantee of healing. As we rose from the table, I caught my reflection in the polished glass doors of Whitestone Grill. My posture was straight, my chin high. For once, I wasn't invisible. For once, my family had been forced to see me as I truly was. But what they would do with that truth, that was a question for another day. That night, lying awake in my apartment, the city long since quieted, I replayed every glance, every word. The dinner itself had been flawless. Whitestone's staff executed with precision, each course like a work of art. But beneath the perfection of the meal, emotions had twisted into knots too tight to ignore. I could still see my mother's face as she confessed regret, her voice stripped of pride. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that, for once, she had looked past appearances and seen me. But another part of me, older, more wounded, whispered doubts. Would she still have felt remorse if Uncle Charles hadn't been there, watching, weighing us against his own family? The question gnawed at me long after the lights went out, Thanksgiving had forced the truth into the open. But truth alone was never enough. The night after Thanksgiving, I lay awake long after the city had settled into silence. My apartment, usually a sanctuary, felt charged with restless energy. The flawless dinner replayed in my mind like a film loop. Crystal glasses, polished silverware, and beneath it all, the tension thick enough to slice Whitestone Grill had delivered perfection. But the emotions circling that table were anything but perfect. I could still see my mother's face when I said the words she never expected. I am the owner. Her shock, her shame, her brittle facade crumbling in front of Charles. Later, her trembling confession. I was wrong. And the tears that followed, that I wanted to believe her regret was genuine. I wanted to believe for once that it wasn't about appearances. But doubt not at me. Would she have admitted it if Charles hadn't been there, weighing our family against his own, comparing his surgeon son and banker daughter with me? Morning light didn't bring peace. Instead, my phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice was hesitant, careful, as if she were stepping across thin ice. Claire, last night was intense. But I'm glad you were there. Really glad. Are you? I asked softly. Yes, she said firmly. I know we've let you carry the distance alone. We should have asked more. Cared more. I'm sorry for that. Her apology warmed me, but it also carried guilt. Emily had always been kind but passive. She'd never defended me, never challenged Mom's narrative. Still, her words felt like a fragile bridge. Later, David sent a text. Predictable. Short. You've done well. Congrats. Nothing more. Pride wouldn't let him say what needed saying. But even that begrudging acknowledgement was more than he'd ever given me before. It was my mother's silence, though, that echoed loudest. No calls. No texts. She vanished into her house, and I couldn't tell if she was ashamed or simply overwhelmed. Days passed. Work swallowed me again. Holiday catering contracts, staff scheduling, charity dinners. But beneath the endless tasks, a tug persisted. The dinner had cracks, something open. Cracks left unattended either heal or spread. I needed to know which it would be. A week later, I drove to my parents' house. The front lawn still carried the remnants of autumn, leaves scattered like forgotten confetti. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon candles and something older, heavier. Unspoken words. Mom was in the kitchen folding laundry, her movements mechanical. When she saw me, she froze. Claire, she whispered as I set my bag down, heart pounding. We need to talk. She nodded, eyes glistening. I know. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd once done homework, where she'd once scolded me for grades that weren't good enough, where silence had always been louder than praise. Why didn't you call? I asked. Her hands twisted the fabric in her lap. Because I didn't know what to say. Everything I said that night sounded wrong. I didn't want to hurt you more. You already did, I said quietly. For years you made me feel less than David, less than Emily. Like what I was building didn't count. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was wrong. I thought success had to look a certain way, a law degree, a family, something easy to explain at dinner parties. I didn't see that what you built was greater than any of that. Her honesty shook me. For years I'd begged silently for her recognition, and now finally it was here. Yet instead of triumph I felt grief, for the years wasted, the years unloved. Do you know what hurt most? I asked. She looked up red-eyed. What? That you didn't even ask. You never wanted to know what my work really was. You never asked how I was surviving or if I was happy. You just assumed I was failing. She covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing softly. I know. And I hate myself for it. I reached across the table, hesitated, then laid my hand over hers. If you mean that, then things have to change. Not just words, Mom. Actions. She gripped my hand fiercely. They will. I promise. That promise became the seed of something new. Over the next month she began showing up, not with judgment but with curiosity. She visited Whitestone during the day, meeting my staff, asking questions about supply chains and menu planning. At first her questions were clumsy, awkward, but slowly she began to understand. She even volunteered at our charity dinner, serving meals to families who had nothing. For the first time I saw her humbled, moved by lives outside her own image. And yet doubt lingered in me. Was she proud because she finally saw me, or proud because she finally had something to brag about. One evening after a long day of service, I drove her home. The car was quiet, headlights cutting through winter dark. At last she spoke. "I used to tell myself I wanted to protect you from disappointment," she said softly. "But the truth is, I was the one disappointed. Disappointed that you weren't what I imagined. And that was my failure, not yours." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to lose you again, Claire. Tell me what I can do to make this right." I pulled the car to the curb, tears pricking my eyes. "Just be my mother. Not my judge. Not my critic. Just my mother." She nodded, reaching for my hand. For the first time in years, I let her hold it. But even as hope stirred, a shadow remained. Families don't transform overnight. Patterns carve deep grooves, and climbing out of them takes time. I didn't know if we could ever erase the years of dismissal. But maybe, just maybe, we could start again. 6 months slipped by like pages turning in a book. Each chapter was a cautious step forward, a fragile attempt at rebuilding something between my mother and me. At first, I braced for her attention to fade. I expected that once the shine of my revelation dulled, she would return to her old ways, clinging to David's courtroom victories and Emily's family milestones. But to my surprise, she didn't. She came to Whitestone Grill often, not as a demanding customer, but as a guest who wanted to learn. She asked about the menu, about sourcing ingredients, even about staffing challenges. She lingered in the kitchen, watching the chefs work, marveling at the choreography. The first time she volunteered at our charity gala, handing plates of roasted chicken to families who had nothing, I watched her face shift. The pride she had once reserved only for appearances melted into something softer, more grounded. For the first time, I saw her moved not by what others might think, but by what she was actually witnessing, and yet, the doubt never fully left me. Every time she introduced me to someone new, her voice carried a practiced glow. "This is my daughter, Claire. She owns Thompson Culinary Holdings, 7 restaurants, 2 catering companies, 3 Michelin stars." Her words sounded rehearsed, polished like fine silver. And I couldn't stop wondering, was she proud of me or just proud of what I had become in the eyes of others? One night after a late service, we sat together at Whitestone's bar. The restaurant had emptied, the air still rich with garlic, wine, and laughter from earlier. She sipped her tea while I unwound with a glass of water. "I've been thinking a lot about that night," she said suddenly. "Thanksgiving. About how I excluded you." I kept my eyes on the glass in my hand. "I realize now it wasn't about you," she continued, her voice shaking. "It was about me. About my fear that you'd make me look small compared to Charles's children. I was shallow, and I let that fear dictate everything. I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Her honesty pierced me. Still, I asked the question that haunted me. If I hadn't been successful, if I really had been barely scraping by with a food truck, would you still regret it? Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Yes, because I excluded my daughter. Not my resume. Not my net worth. My daughter." The simplicity of her words nearly undid me. I wanted to believe her, but part of me held back. Because love tested in success is easy. Love tested in failure, that's what proves truth. Over the months, small moments gave me reason to hope. She no longer asked first about profit margins. Instead, she asked if I was sleeping enough, eating enough, finding joy in the chaos. She showed up to Emily's kids' soccer games and to David's legal seminars with equal enthusiasm. It was as though she was finally learning that being present mattered more than being impressive. But the question lingered in my heart. Was this real change or just another performance, this time directed at me? Spring melted into summer and Whitestone hosted our annual charity dinner. My mother arrived early, apron tied at her waist, cheeks flushed with anticipation. She carried trays, chatted with volunteers, laughed with children. At one point, I caught her watching me across the room. The pride in her eyes wasn't polished or performative. It was raw. Later that night, as we closed the restaurant, she pulled me aside. "Claire," she said, gripping my hand tightly. "Thank you for letting me in, for giving me another chance. I don't deserve it, but I want to earn it every day." Her words softened something inside me that had been stone for years. And yet, when I lay in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, the old question returned. Do people ever truly change, or do they simply learn to play a different role? Thanksgiving became a story we retold often, almost like family legend. My siblings recounted it with laughter, glossing over the pain, remembering only the drama of the reveal. For them it was entertainment. For me it was something deeper. A turning point. Both painful and liberating that I had walked into that room invisible. I had walked out undeniable. Now, whenever my mother bragged about me, I listened with cautious patience. Sometimes it annoyed me, sometimes it warmed me. But I learned not to live for her approval. Because the greatest transformation that night hadn't been hers. It was mine, that I no longer needed their validation. I had seen what I was capable of. I had stood at the head of a table that once excluded me and spoken the truth they couldn't silence. Success had taught me lessons about sacrifice, leadership, ambition. But my family taught me something greater. Real strength is not in proving others wrong. It's in standing firm in who you are. Whether they ever recognize it or not. My mother still brags about that Thanksgiving at Whitestone. She tells anyone who will listen that her daughter owns the restaurant, that she built an empire from a truck. Maybe she does it partly for image. Maybe she always will. But I've also seen her quieter moments. Volunteering at events, asking about my health, whispering I'm proud of you without needing an audience. Maybe that's redemption. Or maybe it's just another illusion. But either way, I realized something important. I no longer needed to know which. Because I had already found my peace.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. We're so close to 1,000 subs, and your support means the world.